What we see behind us here this morning is just the continuing destruction of the historic fabric of Belfast. Behind us the Orpheus building, the Art College, and then just last week where we're standing here on the corner of Donegal Street and York Street at the end of Royal Avenue. On the corner we had the destruction of the Metropole building, and this is all plans for the University of Ulster to basically move their campus currently at Jordanstown down into the centre of Belfast. And over the next week or two we're going to have the complete destruction of the Orpheus building. And this is unfortunately a bit of a pattern that has kind of developed in our city compared to other cities like London. For instance, the new Central St Martin's Art College in central London, they have used a historic building to ground the building within which is a very, very commercial part of the city. But unfortunately here in Belfast we seem to have the inability to take advantage to build on our distinctive historic city that we have.
Behind us is the Metropole building. It's partly demolished, but was it worth saving?
We believe it was. It forms a tapestry of Art Deco buildings in this part of the city and should have been retained alongside the Orpheus that was built just before it. The Orpheus was designed by Samuel Stevenson. It was built in 1932. It has a significant circulation core to it. And it has a nice staircase, some significant timber detailing and also stained glass windows. It has a ballroom at the top which has lovely plasterwork in it, and unfortunately those weren't seen to be significant enough to maintain a listed status. We've campaigned since 2011 to protect the building. We tried to get it listed twice. Unfortunately the Department of Environment didn't feel it met its listing criteria and therefore it was refused. The conservation officer of the department at the time recommended that it did make a significant contribution to the conservation area beside it, because it sits on its periphery. Unfortunately this was also not acknowledged in the progress, and so therefore the building was not listed. It doesn't lie within the conservation area, so therefore it is vulnerable to demolition and alteration.
The university's plan is to move 14,000 students into what is basically one building, and we see this as a wee bit of a lost opportunity. Say the university's plans is for a 12-storey building. Now we would question why within Belfast, we look around us, we see the heights of buildings, the amount of empty space that we have, and empty space, buildable land, the amount of empty buildings that could be incorporated. We've got the courthouse on the Crumlin Road, we've got the historic transport house on High Street, so we've got all these empty space, empty buildings, and how something could have been incorporated within the fabric of Belfast to create more of a campus of a university as opposed to one big building, because a lot of students just going on one big building first thing in the morning, coming out in the evening. It's not contributing a huge amount to Belfast, and basically we just think it's a little bit of a lost opportunity.
And obviously it's a good thing that Northern Ireland is moving forward, and we like to see it move forward, but we would recommend that there are unused sites in Belfast. There's an awful lot of underdeveloped areas within the city centre. There are an awful lot of car parks that have been the sites of previous buildings that have been demolished and therefore now sit empty. We would like to see the underdeveloped areas and the car park areas that were perhaps proposed for development used in future development, and if possibilities for regeneration are there, that they are fully taken advantage of as well.
In terms of the actual building itself, the Orpheus building behind, if we look at the building, it's probably not the most beautiful architectural building in the world in terms of fine architectural detail, but it is a solid red brick building. It is Belfast. It's rooted in Belfast history. The former cooperative society built the building as a department store. The tradition of the building in terms of the long life of used as a department store. It was then taken over by the university, and the famous ballroom up at the top of the up at the top story, which was kind of converted into studios for the art college. But that was a ballroom, and back in the 50s, my mother and father, they met in that very room.
Well, a building like the Orpheus has a strong social history. It was the co-op. It was famous for its window displays. It had the Ballroom of Romance, the Orpheus Ballroom up above. People met here, people fell in love here. People used this building, loved this building, and then people went on to study here in later years. Its windows that once displayed its produce and the co-op merchandise then went on to show students to the street doing their work for the art college, and I'm sure a lot of people have a big connection to this building. So we've seen that demonstrated online, where we've had a very, very significant response. We are aware of a 900 strong group on Facebook to save the Orpheus, and we feel that perhaps the fact that this building is up for demolition and is likely to be demolished shouldn't be the end, that it should be a constant dialogue with Belfast City Council, and people have to communicate that they care for heritage going forward into the future.
Buildings aren't actually just fine architectural detail. Buildings are spaces. Buildings are rooted in history. They're rooted in social history, and in some ways that's what should be preserved, not just the bricks and mortar. Reusing existing buildings and parcelling together groups of buildings as opposed to building one big new building. Yes, it can take longer. But those are the challenges for our built environment. If we always just think big, brash and brand new is beautiful, well then we'll end up with a city that will be like any other city in Europe or even in the world. What is very important, and it's very important for visitors, for investors, is that we have a distinctive city, we have a distinctive brand, and that is what is very, very important. And the thing is, we do have that. Belfast does have that, but what we have to do is seize on it and build on it and make special what we got.
Obviously, it's of Belfast's interest to bring in economic value, but what has to be seen is that the regeneration of historic buildings is part of that. It's part of our tourism offering, it's part of why people want to be in the city, it's part of our identity, it's part of our social culture. This building is part of a fabric of Belfast that people recognise and what they come back to see. If we continue to erode that, we won't really have anything but an unrecognisable city, so to speak. So we have to just balance economic and historic environment measures to really, really protect what we have left. We've lost an awful lot in Belfast due to the Blitz and the Troubles. A lot of our historic buildings have been compromised by this, and therefore we recommend that any future development really, really respects them, particularly in the forthcoming local development plan, which is currently being in initial stages of preparation by Belfast City Council.
Belfast City Council have a great opportunity again with the transfer of responsibilities of planning. Belfast City Council by 2017 have to come up with local development plans, and this is where Belfast City Council can really set an agenda, and they can say, right, okay, how are we going to push forward the economy but also within the context that is distinctive Belfast.
We just recommend that whatever new development takes place in the city is done appropriately and sympathetically to the fabric that we have left. Even if the building does come down, to continue to say that they care, that they did not want this to happen, and that there should be changes in the future.